In the 19th century, Britain sold a huge amount of opium to the Chinese against the Qing Emperor's edicts that declared opium illegal. China fought 2 opium wars with the West and lost. 200 years later, the roles are reversed. China is now the biggest source of fentanyl, a lethal synthetic opioid that kills tens of thousands of Americans every year due to overdose. This is causing an opioid crisis in the United States. Is China engaged in a new opium war? Will the recent legalization of marijuana in the United States help China win? Hello everyone, welcome to my show. I'm Lei. The United States is facing the deadliest drug epidemic in its history. In 2020, 87,000 people died from drug overdoses, and at least half of them are related to fentanyl. And the problem is just getting worse. From October 2020 to March 2021, U.S. Customs and Border Protection seized more than 2,268 kilos of fentanyl, a 360% increase from the same period the year before. The amount of fentanyl confiscated has the potential to kill 1.2 billion people. April Babcock lost her 25-year-old son, Austin, to fentanyl in 2019. She calls her son's death drug-induced homicide and said that anyone taking fentanyl is like playing Russian roulette because the drug is deadly powerful. As opioids go, fentanyl is cheap but highly potent. Since 2013, China has been the principal source of fentanyl in the U.S., or the chemicals that produce fentanyl. One Los Angeles Times article last year said that for drug traffickers interested in getting in on the fentanyl business, all roads led to Wuhan, the Chinese city now infamous for a virus. The LA Times called Wuhan the capital of fentanyl. The Trump administration had put pressure on the Chinese government and asked for cooperation in clamping down on fentanyl production and smuggling. On April 1, 2019, China banned fentanyl exports, per the U.S. request. However, it's still legal to make the precursor ingredients and ship them to other countries like Mexico, where the drug is made and then smuggled into the U.S. By the way, the ongoing southern border crisis has made smuggling much easier. The Chinese regime doesn't believe it's responsible for the American opioid crisis. The regime mouthpiece People's Daily stated in August 2019 that fentanyl abuse is America's own societal problem and China shouldn't be blamed. It pointed out that the United States has 5% of the world's population but consumes 80% of the world's opioids, and that the rising death rate from fentanyl is the result of widespread abuse of painkillers and the American government's inability to control the crisis. Ironically, the rhetoric is very similar to 200 years ago when the British mocked the Chinese people's addiction to opium and their government's inability to address the internal crisis due to corrupt officials and merchants. One British media called Qing Dynasty China the sick man of the East. Chinese were humiliated then and still are now. The High Commissioner appointed by the Emperor to end opium trade with Britain, Lin Zexu, wrote an open letter to Queen Victoria begging her to stop the opium trade. He argued that China was providing Britain with tea, porcelain, spices, and silk, while Britain was sending only poison in return. The letter was said to be lost in transit. Lin eventually burned over 1,000 tons of opium near Canton, and that triggered the First Opium War. Some Chinese have said that China is now fighting a new opium war with the West, and this time the roles are reversed. China is no longer the victim, and the West is suffering from the exact epidemic that China was suffering from 200 years ago. The People's Daily article attributed America's opioid crisis to 4 internal factors. 1. Pharmaceutical companies' greed. 2. Doctors overprescribing. 3. Ineffective government crackdowns on drugs. And 4. Marijuana legalization. Although I'm certainly no fan of the Chinese Communist Party, and I do think it's responsible for the opioid crisis, there is some truth to these four factors. Corruption and greed are whittling away our moral fiber and destroying America's national strength. And most importantly, the legalization of marijuana that's taking place in the United States is a problem in itself. This is, in fact, the next frontier of the new opium war. As Americans argue the benefits of legalizing marijuana, it's weakening our society, allowing the CCP to move in and take control. On November 3rd last year, the U.S. may have had no clear presidential winner, but marijuana was declared the biggest winner of the 2020 election. Specifically, voters legalized the possession of marijuana in Arizona, Montana, New Jersey, and South Dakota. Also, voters approved access to medical cannabis in Mississippi and South Dakota. When voters in deep red states join voters in deep blue states, calling for the legalization of marijuana, America is on the dangerous path of giving up self-control. According to a report by the marijuana sales data platform BDSA, legal marijuana sales in the United States reached a record $17.5 billion in 2020, a 46% increase from 2019. Among them, 3 Democratic states, California, Colorado, and Oregon, rank as the top 3. In Colorado, 48% of people smoke marijuana. American marijuana consumers are becoming younger, and suburban women have become a new user group. BDSA predicts that by 2026, the annual sales of cannabis in the United States will reach $41 billion, roughly equivalent to the entire beer industry. That means Americans will buy as many cannabis as beer. The growing demand for cannabis in America has alerted China to a great opportunity just ripe for the taking. Chinese media started reporting on the trend as early as 2015. At the beginning of 2017, when the cannabis ban was lifted, China took note of the policy change. Special analysis was conducted to provide future plans for the cannabis production industry. China has big plans for cannabis, and it's written into the 14th five-year plan, which starts this year. Industrial hemp and related industries have a broad space for development. Back in 2016, China's 13th five-year plan laid out a grand plan to grow hemp on 3.2 million acres. In the meantime, China has been a fast mover in producing and exporting extracts, specifically CBD, having quickly developed infrastructure in the southern province of Yunnan, a region known for its cannabis industry. Now, China already has half of the world's acreage for cannabis cultivation. And since the country itself bans cannabis as a recreational drug, its production is targeted for export. The ArcView Group, one of the first cannabis investment firms, pointed out that multinational pharmaceutical and nutraceutical companies will purchase cannabis-based active pharmaceutical ingredients, or APIs, from China because of its low cost, and that China will become the largest CBD supplier in the global supply chain. The impact of large-scale cannabis consumption on society is still unknown. One thing we do know is that when China supplies America with cheap recreational cannabis products, and when a large percentage of Americans get addicted to them, we have lost self-control to China. Just like how opium weakened China 200 years ago, cannabis will weaken America. Actually, it will be even worse because opium was illegal in China back then, while cannabis is legal in America now. When our national addiction becomes a weakness to be taken advantage of, we have no one to blame but ourselves. Growing up, every Chinese was taught the history of the Opium Wars. It's remembered as the century of humiliation. That's why Chinese people have a firm conviction that any form of addiction will destroy a person and a nation. It will certainly be sad for me to see America lose itself to cannabis and repeat history. I really hope that doesn't happen. I was born and raised in China, and now I'm an American. I love both countries and hope that neither one wins or loses the new opium war. Thank you for watching, and please share this video and subscribe to my channel. Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you next time.